In Project Explorer, all of my AOIs have the blue partition icon and appear under the project globe. The active AOI gets a yellow arrow. Right now I have global active. I can switch AOIs with a right click. So I'll activate Bakken. Right click activate and it will get the yellow arrow. This will also simultaneously filter well-base. Now, when I create new layers from Wellbase or GeoAtlas with this AOI active, the layer gets created in the active AOI folder. So you can see on this right pane, I have a number of layers under this Bakken AOI. And the AOI acts as a special folder in the project tree where you can house layers, but also cross sections and maps. So not only are AOIs geographic filters, but most companies also employ their AOIs to organize layers and files by user. The project's master tech typically work in a large project-wide AOI. This could be global, or I've got two large Williston AOIs. And this is where they'll create layers that are used by all users or most users, such as the universal base map layers. Think about your well spot layers, your townships and range. So AOIs don't have to be small. Okay, but once I've got these big AOIs created and the techs have them maintained, from here, each user would create at least one AOI per project, named with their initials to store their layers, maps, and cross sections. We can all create additional AOIs as needed to subset that regional area. So I have my LAC Cedar AOI, my Elm Coulee, North Dakota, which is big and regional. My colleague Scott has his own set of AOIs with his initials, SMO, including Nesson, Rough Rider, and Bakken. We can both work in the Bakken, but we can keep our layers separate this way. All right, I'm going to activate my Bakken AOI so it gets a yellow arrow. Okay, as I mentioned, while this AOI is active, any layers I create are saved under this AOI. So for example, I've got my Richmond County wells. Let's take a look at this on the map. If I switch to my map, I've got my LAC Bakken AOI extents outlined with the dashed line, and you can see that my Richmond County wells layer ends right at those extents. And again, my well base is still filtered to my AOI Bakken extents. When my colleagues and I want to collaborate, we can copy our personal Bakken layers into our shared Bakken AOI if we like. So I could take my Richmond County wells, or more likely my Bakken structure map, right click, copy, and then paste it into this Bakken. The copy paste here works just like it does in Windows File Explorer. My colleague needed to work regionally within the project too, so he created his own large project-wide AOI. This allows him to work regionally, but keep his layers and cross sections in his own personal workspace. Again, it's nice when we can keep our files separate and not step on each other's toes, except for when we want to collaborate. All right, while I'm using AOIs to create personal workspaces, at the same time, GeoGraphix does not prohibit users from sharing AOIs, and techs are able to assist geologists in their own personal AOIs as needed. All right, some companies share their universal base map layers, like their township and range and their well spots. Typically, this works best when you have a small number of users accessing a given project. When a large number of users is using a single project, sometimes it works better for users to copy these big shared base map layers into their own AOIs. That way they can customize their display settings to suit their needs and not step on each other's toes. All right, final thought on AOIs. You'll likely find the most convenience working in a medium-sized AOI. This allows you to avoid frequent switches between several small AOIs. That said, small AOIs can be very useful for detailed contouring or to limit calculations. Contouring in an AOI instead of global is always recommended for performance, precision, and to protect global extents. Uh, for performance reasons, unless you're truly trying to contour regionally, I recommend a mid-sized AOI. Look for some exciting developments coming in upcoming releases where we'll be trimming our isomap layers even within an AOI. But for now, stick with the AOI size. At this point, the project building phase is complete. My colleagues and I are now creating cross sections, contouring, and running calculations. But today, I started a new base map and noticed that my project has grown far larger than the Williston Basin. In fact, here is my data down here. I'm going to turn on the state boundaries, and yeah, I'm very far outside of the Williston Basin. So in fact, it's much larger. If I go back to my daily base map that's cropped to the extent I want for my Williston project, I can see from the cursor readout that it should range from around 49 to the north or so, um, 45 to the south, although I could go into South Dakota a bit further, maybe down to 42. Um, the east around -99, and then to the west around -108. As a best practice, I want to keep my project geographically restricted, and I'm going to find and remove the data that's outside of my desired extents and wrapping around the globe. Okay, to get started, I'm going to use Project Explorer. Okay, I'm going to check my extents. So I'll right click on my project globe and go to Properties, and then choose the Extents tab. And I can see, okay, I'm going almost to the equator in the south, and I'm entirely too far to the east and west. To the north, not so bad. I'm just a tiny bit further north than I want to be. So I'll jot these down or screen capture this as a reference for what data I'm looking for. Go ahead and click OK. And my next step is I'll choose Tools, Recreate Project Extents. And I'll just get a weight cursor, an hourglass cursor. This tool prompts Project Explorer to re-inventory the project's data and layers for the min and max extents of each data point and each layer. This tool doesn't actually add data to expand your project. It doesn't break your project, but it might make you face the music that your project has grown too large, or in this case, really outrageously too large. Okay, so when my cursor gets back to normal, I'll go back to the Project Properties tab, which is that right click on the globe and extents, and just see if they've changed. Okay, for better or for worse. But in this case, if I didn't get lucky, but if I had grown my extents and then deleted or repaired the offending data, this reinventory might have been all that I needed, but I'm not so lucky this time. I still have bad data lurking on in my project. Okay, so my next step is to go down in the project directory to my user files folder. My login is Paperspace. I'll go to log files, and then on the right, there's a recreate extents log. So I'll open up this file and take a look. The first row is my database coordinate system, which is geographic lat long. I find that easiest to think in, so that's good. The next important row is this database row, and this tells me the extent of all my wells, shot points, leases, or landnet data. All right, so north looks okay, right around 49, but my south looks too far south. 24 is definitely below the Williston extents. The east and the west, however, don't look too bad from what I'm after, maybe just a little bit far east. Okay, I'm not necessarily trying to trim it down to exactly the Williston, but I want more or less the Williston. So anything down south at 24, 25 degrees is too far. So the first thing I need to do is troubleshoot the database. Until I fix this top row, nothing below matters to me. So I'll close this log and I'll open up Wellbase. I'll use the report tool. There's the Excel report button over to the left that I'll click on, and then my report type is going to be project extents. So I'll click OK to that, and it will open up in Excel as it inventories. Here is my report. I've got data type and then the 4 bounding min and max points. So my scout ticket, this would be my well surface locations, and 49 looks good, but that is too far south for Williston. So I'm going to need to troubleshoot my well surface locations. I'll just go into grid view. I've got global active. So the easiest thing to do is start by sorting ascending on latitude. And okay, I've got APIs starting with 42 that are down at 27 latitude. Those do not belong in this project. I must have accidentally imported the wrong file. So to take care of these, I could just delete their lat longs, but these wells don't belong here. So I'm going to instead delete the entire set of wells. I'll use my delete key for that. Confirm yes. Ask twice, delete once. And those should be gone. Now, it's a little bit trickier to filter for those bottom locations. So I'm going to use Query Builder for that. It looked like my survey points were okay, but I had some bottom hole lat longs that weren't great. So I'll go to the surveys table. I'll drag my well ID into the first column, and then the bottom hole latitude into the second column, and the longitude into the third column. And I'm looking for data that's pretty far south. I think my Williston extents, I want them around 45, but I could go down a little bit lower, perhaps to 42. I'm going to search for anything below 40 latitudes. I'll run this query and look at that. Luckily, it's only a single well. In older versions of GeoGraphix, I would have saved this filter and applied it to well base, but in the latest version, 2023.1, we have a cool new feature where I can just right click and view this well in Wellbase, and it takes me right there. I'm going to switch over to Scout Ticket View and take a look. Okay, so this well is in Fremont, a little bit further south, but not horrible. 42 isn't unreasonable, negative 108. I'm still in my ballpark of my Williston. Let's go to that survey tab, and I think I made some typos. I think I transposed a 42 for a bottom hole and got my decimal in the wrong spot for my bottom hole longitude. I don't have time to look these up right now and refine them. If I did, I'd just go ahead and fix them. But since I don't, I'll go ahead and just delete them. Note down what API I need to come back to. I'm going to save my changes, give it a TD. Okay, I think I fixed my database. Let's check. Moment of truth, we'll go back to Excel reports, project extents, click OK. Here is my new report, and all right, everything appears in the 40s in the lat long, in the lat column, and in the longitude column. I think I'm all in my window that I stated for the Williston between negative 99 and 108. So I think my database is set. So let's go back and recreate extents again. I'll go to Tools, Recreate Project Extents. This could take a little bit longer in a bigger project, but once that weight cursor goes away, you double click the Recreate Extents .log file. And again, it's this database row that you always look at first. And mine looks much better. So this is fabulous. All right, now I'm ready to scroll down and see what the overall extents look like. And oh, they're still pretty bad. I'm still going down almost to the equator, entirely too far east and west. All right, let's look at this log. The first thing I see is an error for the first layer. Unable to transform the extents into database coordinate system. Okay, that implies to me that the data is outside the continental US in my case, or if I was in Canada, outside of Canada, just crossing very far across GeoGraphix regions. And I see by the name, this layer is called Alaska counties. So that obviously shouldn't be in here. So let's go in to Project Explorer and we'll just cut that and put it into the project it should be, or in this case, I'll just delete it. Okay, back to the log. What else do I have? Okay, we've taken care of this first layer. I see a Bakken structure that's going too far. It must be going out to those same extent. So I'll need to deal with that. That I know from the name is an isomap layer. We'll deal with that last. Going down the log, I see another error. This one is unable to retrieve layer extents. Even though that one looks like a scary error, this time it's actually not so bad. It just means that the layer doesn't have extents for some reason. So the good news is they're not breaking my extents. In this case, it looks like it's a conditional pi layer, and those and drainage ellipse layers don't carry extents. Same thing with ArcGIS layers. You'll see that message. Or if you just have a blank layer that has nothing on it, you'll get that message. Generally, you can disregard those when troubleshooting extents problems. Okay, I have copy pasted this log into Excel so I can sort it just to make it a little bit more user friendly. So this is my parsed sorted file, and I've sorted by latitude ascending. And it looks like I've got that block instruction layer that's too big. -26. ISOMAP layers I save for last. Oh, my states. I probably got the entire US in here that I showed. So I should probably trim that down. We'll do that first. And then wells going down. Oh, okay, so that looks like those Texas wells are making that well-based layer too big. So I think we'll work backwards. We'll start with the well layer, fix that, then the states, then the Bakken. Okay, so to fix the well-based layer, that's pretty easy. Let's see, don't have it on my map, so we'll just go into well-base and I'll go to the layer menu and I'll update a well-based layer. If I had a bunch of well-based layers to fix, I could do it in here. Again, this only works if you've already fixed your database and the wells themselves. Okay, so the layer I need to fix is wells update Feb 21st. So I'll go ahead. I don't need to actually change it. I'm just going to go ahead and let it update. That was quick. Now I'll take a look at it in Project Explorer, and I can right click and see its extents by going to Properties and Database. And it looks like now it's only going down to 43. So it's back in the Bakken. So I've got one layer fixed. Well-based layers, as long as you fixed your database, you just update them. You can use the bulk and you should be good to go. Okay, the states layer. This one was pretty big. It was the whole US. 23, -128, -65. So I really only care about the state boundaries within my Williston area. So what I'll do is I'll use our combine subset function to fix this one. I'll go ahead and activate my Williston AOI. My Williston 2 is just a little bit bigger than my other Williston. So I want my states to be fairly on the generous side. So I'll go in to GeoAtlas. Doesn't really matter what map I have open, but I'll go to layers and I'll go to combine subset. And that was a shapefile layer. So I'll pick that as the type. And then I'll find it. And I want to subset my states to just the Williston area state boundaries. And I'll just clip these. at the active AOI boundary. So go ahead and finish. Okay, so now I have a new states layer, Williston area, and I'll go to properties and double check that. Okay, now this is nice and small. It stops at 45 south and is right at my Williston extents. All right, 2 layers fixed, 1 to go. All right, let's go see what that last layer was. Lock-in structure in global, and that layer had inherited those extents from probably from that giant states layer. So I'm going to subset that. What I'll do is I'll copy this giant lock-in structure layer, and I will paste it into my Williston 2 AOI. And then I'll add it to my map. It's probably not a great contour layer at this point if it's stretching all the way across the entire United States. So now I'll select it to my map. I'll set it as my active layer. It looks like I have a few data buffs, but not as bad as I thought. Now I'll right click and I'll update the layer in ISOMAP with this AOI active, and I'll check this box, update grid extents. That's what I want to do. I want to shrink it into this Williston 2 AOI. So I'll click refresh, preserve grid spacing. I'll go ahead and do that, but the grid spacing is probably too big. I'll do a continue and see its extents by going to properties and database, and it looks like now it's only going down to 43, so it's back in the Bakken. So I've got 1 layer fixed. Well-based layers, as long as you fixed your database, you just update them. You can use the bulk and you should be good to go. Okay, the states layer. This one was pretty big. It was the whole US. 23, -128, -65. So I really only care about the state boundaries within my Williston area. So what I'll do is I'll use our combine subset function to fix this one. I'll go ahead and activate my Williston AOI. My Williston 2 is just a little bit bigger than my other Williston, so I want my states to be fairly on the generous side. So I'll go in to GeoAtlas. Doesn't really matter what map I have open, but I'll go to layers and I'll go to combine subset. And that was a shapefile layer. So I'll pick that as the type. And then I'll find it. And I want to subset my states to just the Williston area state boundaries. And I'll just clip these at the active AOI boundary. So go ahead and finish. Okay, so now I have a new states layer, Williston area, and I'll go to properties and double check that. Okay, now this is nice and small. It stops at 45 south and is right at my Williston extents. All right, 2 layers fixed, 1 to go. All right, let's go see what that last layer was. Lock-in structure in global, and that layer had inherited those extents from probably from that giant states layer. So I'm going to subset that. What I'll do is I'll copy this giant lock-in structure layer, and I will paste it into my Williston 2 AOI. And then I'll add it to my map. It's probably not a great contour layer at this point if it's stretching all the way across the entire United States. So now I'll select it to my map. I'll set it as my active layer. It looks like I have a few data buffs, but not as bad as I thought. Now I'll right click and I'll update the layer in ISOMAP with this AOI active, and I'll check this box, update grid extents. That's what I want to do. I want to shrink it into this Williston 2 AOI. So I'll click refresh, preserve grid spacing. I'll go ahead and do that, but the grid spacing is probably too big. I'll do a continue, let it go. I'll go to build parameters. Probably want to trim down that grid size to make it a much smaller regional map. And I'll finish. All right, I want to remember I copied that, so I want to get rid of this giant layer. As you saw today, ISOMAP layers in version 2023.1 and lower take the extents of the host AOI. And if that's global and global's grown too big, like it did for me today, the ISOMAP grid can also be huge. The steps takes up space, takes a lot of time, and doesn't result in great contours. This is why GeoGraphix recommends contouring in an AOI. But speaking of contouring in AOIs, I have exciting news. Our developers are currently adding ISOMAP options to allow users to create limited ISOMAP grids within an AOI. So your grid can be smaller than your AOI. Look for these new features in upcoming releases. It's super exciting and should help a lot of people. Okay, we've deleted bad layers, corrected wells, trimmed my ice map layers. I am ready to do a final recreate extents and double check. Let's see how they look. Properties, extents, and they are trimmed down. My base maps are good, and I can get back to work. We covered a lot today, especially troubleshooting extents. We have the extents workflow well documented on the website gverse.com. You can find it under support and then knowledge center. Go to white papers and scroll down to Project Explorer and you'll see troubleshooting extents. Save a copy so you can refresh your memory if you've noticed your project's extents have grown too much. It's much easier to troubleshoot these problems early in the game as soon as they get big versus after they've stayed big for months. So thanks for tuning in today. And as always, contact our support team if you have any problems.